There is a specific number that haunts the American imagination. It sits there, glowing in neon at the back of our collective mind, representing the finish line. That number is $1 million. For decades, financial media, retirement planners, and cultural osmosis have taught us that becoming a millionaire is the benchmark for success. It is the threshold where anxiety is supposed to end and freedom is supposed to begin. We are told that if you work hard, save your money, and participate in the American economy, you will eventually cross that line. But when you actually look at the data, not the marketing brochures, but the raw data from the Federal Reserve and the Census Bureau, you start to realize that the story we've been told is statistically rare. The path to a seven-figure net worth isn't a crowded highway. It's a narrow footpath that most people accidentally step off of long before they reach their 60s. Today, we are going to look at the reality of that number. We are going to look at exactly how many Americans actually reach a net worth of $1 million before retirement, why the vast majority falls short, and perhaps most importantly, whether that number even means what you think it means anymore. We are going to deconstruct the machinery of wealth accumulation in the United States to understand why the system is designed to filter people out and how you can position yourself to be one of the few who passes through the filter. Just a quick note before we dive into the deep end. I am a narrator exploring financial systems and economic history, not a financial advisor. This is for educational purposes and to help you understand the landscape, not individual investment advice. To understand the rarity of the millionaire, we have to start with a concept from evolutionary biology and astronomy called the Great Filter. The Great Filter is a theory used to explain why, despite the vastness of the universe, we haven't found alien life yet. The idea is that there must be some hurdle, some massive obstacle in the development of life that is extremely difficult to get past. In the context of American personal finance, there is also a Great Filter. Actually, there are three of them, three specific barriers that stop the average worker from converting their labor into lasting capital. But before we identify those filters, we need to establish the baseline. We need to look at the scoreboard. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, which is the gold standard for wealth data in the U.S., approximately 10 to 12% of American households have a net worth of $1 million or more. That sounds somewhat promising. 1 in 10. If you look around a crowded restaurant, a few tables are occupied by millionaires. But there is a massive asterisk next to that number. That statistic is for net worth. It includes everything you own minus everything you owe. For the vast majority of that top 10%, the bulk of that wealth is trapped in their primary residence. It is illiquid. You cannot eat your house in retirement. You cannot pay for medical bills with your front porch. If we strip away home equity and look at investable assets, cash, stocks, bonds, retirement accounts, the number of Americans with a $1 million accessible to fund their life drops predominantly. We are likely looking at fewer than 5 to 7% of the population who have a liquid $1 million portfolio. This is the first uncomfortable truth. The millionaire next door is often house rich and cash constrained. But let's zoom out to the median. The average is a dangerous number because people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos pull the average up into the stratosphere. The median tells us what the person in the literal middle of the pack is doing. According to the Federal Reserve, the median net worth for Americans between the ages of 55 and 64, people right on the doorstep of retirement, is roughly $212,000. That includes the house. If you look strictly at retirement accounts, the median balance for that same age group is roughly $185,000. If you use the 4% rule, a standard guideline suggesting you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio in the first year of retirement and adjust for inflation thereafter, a nest egg of $185,000 generates about $7,400 a year in income. That is roughly $600 a month. That is the reality. The gap between the cultural expectation of a $1 million retirement and the statistical reality of a $600 a month supplement to Social Security is the defining economic tension of our time. So the question becomes, why? If the stock market has historically returned about 10% per year before inflation, and if the power of compound interest is accessible to everyone, why do so few people pass through the Great Filter? This brings us to the first filter, the income trap and the cost of living. To save $1 million, you have to have a surplus. It's a mathematical impossibility to invest what you do not have. For the last 40 years, we have seen a decoupling of productivity and wages. According to the Economic Policy Institute and data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, since 1979, productivity has grown roughly 4 times faster than pay. Workers are generating more value than ever before, but a smaller percentage of that value is showing up in their paychecks. Simultaneously, the cost of the big three, housing, education, and healthcare, has exploded. These are not discretionary purchases. They are the admission tickets to a middle-class life. When the cost of admission rises faster than the wages earned by the participants, the margin for error disappears. The surplus required to feed the compounding machine is consumed by the cost of simply existing. Most Americans are not failing to reach $1 million because they buy too many lattes. That is a lazy narrative designed to shift blame downward. They are failing to reach it because the structural costs of housing and healthcare act as a vacuum on their ability to acquire assets. When you spend your prime compounding years, your 20s and 30s, paying off student loans and struggling to afford a down payment on a home, you are losing the most potent weapon you have: time. However, even among those who earn a good income, those who clear the first filter, many fail at the second. The second filter is the liability trap. We live in an economy that is predicated on consumption. Roughly 70% of US GDP is consumer spending. The entire machinery of modern media, technology, and advertising is engineered to do one thing: separate you from your capital. We are social animals, and we signal our status through what we own. The trap here is the confusion between looking rich and being rich. Looking rich requires high income and high spending. Being rich requires high income and high saving. They are opposites. When you see someone driving a $100,000 luxury SUV, you are not seeing their wealth. You are seeing $100,000 that is no longer working for them. You are seeing a liability that depreciates, meaning it loses value every single day. Many high-income earners, doctors, lawyers, tech workers, never reach financial independence because they inflate their lifestyle to match their income. This is known as the hedonic treadmill. You run faster and faster, earning more and more, but you stay in the same place financially because your expectations for comfort and luxury rise in lockstep with your paycheck. To pass this filter, you have to be willing to look poorer than you actually are. You have to be willing to drive a 5-year-old car when you could afford a new one. You have to be willing to live in a modest house when the bank says you qualify for a mansion. This requires a psychological fortitude that is rare. But let's say you navigate the income gap and you avoid the lifestyle creep. You have the surplus and you are ready to invest. This brings us to the third and perhaps most tragic filter, the behavioral gap. The stock market is a volatility machine. It is designed to transfer wealth from the impatient to the patient. But human beings are not wired for patience. We are wired to run from tigers, not to watch a line on a graph go down by 30% and do nothing. Data from Dalbar, a financial services market research firm, consistently shows that the average investor significantly underperforms the very funds they are invested in. How is that possible? It's possible because people buy when they feel good, when the market is high and everyone is talking about how much money they're making. And they sell when they feel scared, when the market crashes and the news says the world is ending. This behavior destroys compounding. If you miss just the 10 best days of the stock market over a 20-year period, your returns are cut in half. The third filter filters people out because they try to outsmart a system that rewards doing absolutely nothing. They trade too much, they pay high fees to active managers who promise to beat the market but rarely do, or they sit in cash on the sidelines waiting for the perfect moment to get in while inflation slowly eats their purchasing power. So we have the income filter, the liability filter, and the behavioral filter. It is no wonder that fewer than 10% of us make it through all three. It's an obstacle course designed to trip you up. But here's the good news. Unlike the biological grade filter, which is out of our control, the financial filters are navigable if you understand the rules of the game. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be a hedge fund manager. You just need a system. Let's talk about the math of the solution. let's talk about how an ordinary person earning a median income can actually reach that $1 million mark, or at least get much closer than the average statistics suggest. It starts with understanding the engine of wealth in America, the S&P 500 and the total stock market. Over the last century, despite wars, recessions, pandemics, and political turmoil, the US stock market has acted as a relentless wealth-generating machine. When you buy a low-cost index fund, you are not gambling on a ticker symbol. You are buying a slice of the profits of the largest, most profitable companies in the history of the world. You are aligning your financial future with human innovation and corporate productivity. The tool that most Americans have access to is the 401k or the IRA. These are tax-advantaged accounts. The government, recognizing that pensions are largely a thing of the past, created these vehicles to encourage you to save. When you use a 401k, especially if your employer offers a match, you are instantly getting a return on your money. If your employer matches 50% of your contribution, that is an immediate, risk-free 50% return. There is no other investment in the world that offers that. To pass the income filter, you must automate your savings. You cannot rely on willpower. Willpower is a finite resource. It runs out by the end of the day. You need to set up your financial life so that the money is taken out of your paycheck before it ever hits your bank account. If you don't see it, you don't spend it. You learn to live on the remainder. To pass the liability filter, you have to redefine what success looks like. You have to realize that true wealth is not the car in the driveway, it is the freedom to wake up in the morning and do whatever you want. Every dollar you spend on a status symbol is a dollar you are stealing from your future freedom. This doesn't mean you can never spend money. It means you spend extravagantly on the things you truly love and cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. To pass the behavioral filter, you have to embrace being boring. Good investing should be like watching paint dry or watching grass grow. If you want excitement, take $800 to Las Vegas. If you want wealth, buy a diversified index fund and then stop looking at it. The people who perform the best in their investment accounts are often the ones who lost their passwords or forgot they even had the account. They succeeded because they didn't interrupt the compounding process. Now, we have to address the elephant in the room: inflation. Is $1 million even enough? It is true that $1 million today does not buy what it bought 20 years ago, and 20 years from now, it will buy even less. If we assume an average inflation rate of 3%, in 25 years, you will need roughly $2 million to have the same purchasing power that $1 million provides today. This moves the goalposts. It means the race is harder than we thought, but the principles remain exactly the same. The target number might change, but the method of getting there does not. Whether you need 1 million or 3 million, the vehicle is the same. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference in a diversified portfolio of productive assets, and wait. There is also a psychological component to this. We fixate on the $1 million number, but financial freedom is actually a ratio. It's a relationship between your assets and your expenses. If you can live a happy, fulfilled life on $40,000 a year, you don't need $5 million. You might be free with $1 million. If you require $200,000 a year to be happy, then $1 million is nowhere near enough. This is where you have agency. You might not be able to control the stock market returns, and you might have limited control over your income in the short term, but you have significant control over your burn rate. The lower your expenses, the closer the finish line becomes. So let's go back to the original question. How many Americans really reach $1 million before retirement? The answer is not enough. The system is rigorous, unforgiving, and filled with traps. The default path in America: go to school, take on debt, buy a house you can barely afford, lease a new car every 3 years, and save whatever is left over, is a path to mediocrity and financial stress. The default path leads to that median net worth of $200,000. But you do not have to follow the default path. You can choose to step off the conveyor belt. It requires a shift in identity. You have to stop viewing yourself as a consumer and start viewing yourself as an owner. When you buy a share of an index fund, you are an owner of American business. You are moving from the side of the equation that pays interest to the side that earns interest. It takes time. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It is a get-rich-slow scheme. It is the result of thousands of small, unsexy decisions made over decades. It is the decision to cook at home instead of ordering out. It is the decision to keep the old phone for one more year. It is the decision to increase your 401k contribution by 1% every time you get a raise. These decisions compound. At first, the progress is invisible. You save, and the pile of money looks pathetic. It feels like you're shoveling sand into the ocean. This is the valley of disappointment. This is where most people quit. But if you keep going, eventually the math takes over. The interest starts earning interest. Suddenly, your portfolio grows by more in a year than you earned in your job. That is the tipping point. That is when you have passed the filters. The reality is that reaching $1 million is rare, but it is not impossible. It is not reserved for the lucky or the geniuses. It is reserved for the disciplined. It is reserved for those who can look at the culture of hyperconsumption and say, "No, thank you, I prefer freedom." The numbers from the Federal Reserve are a warning, but they are not a prophecy. They tell us what happens to the average person. But by educating yourself, by understanding the filters, and by taking control of your financial behavior, you are already stepping out of the average. You are writing a different story. The journey to $1 million isn't really about the money. It's about the security, the options, and the peace of mind that the money represents. It's about building a fortress around yourself and your family that the chaos of the world cannot penetrate. And while the statistics say that few make it, the door is open. The path is clear. The only variable left is you.